The frosting on the cake is a perfect, unnatural pink, shimmering under the chandelier light. It smells like sugar and cheap perfume. My sister, standing too close, smells like money and malice. She holds the small, flat box I handed Mom a moment ago. The room, filled with smiling faces, uncles, aunts, cousins, Mom's bridge club friends, holds its breath, or maybe it's just me holding mine. My sister turns the box over in her hands, a slow, deliberate movement. Her nails, impossibly long and painted a cruel red, tap against the simple wrapping paper. She doesn't even look at me. She looks at the box, then at Mom, then back at the box, a small, dismissive smile playing on her lips. "Oh, this is," she starts, her voice dripping with faux sweetness, loud enough for everyone to hear over the hum of conversation. She shakes the box lightly, as if testing its weight, its worth. "Well, isn't this sweet?" From little sister. She pauses, letting the silence stretch, letting the weight of her words land. Her eyes finally flick to mine, sharp and knowing. The smile widens, showing just a hint of perfectly white teeth. "Cheap as always," she says, the sweetness gone, replaced by a casual, brutal contempt. It's not a whisper. It's a statement of fact, delivered to a crowded room. A punch delivered with a smile. My breath catches, a familiar sting. It's public. It's Mom's 60th. And she just did it again. For a split second, the old shame washes over me. The years of feeling small, inadequate, less than. But then the feeling shifts. It hardens. This is it. The moment I've been building towards, waiting for years. The trap is set. And she just walked right into the center of it. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It helps me more than you know, bringing these stories to life. Life wasn't ever exactly easy. Not for any of us growing up. Mom worked hard. Dad did his best. But money was always tight. We didn't have much, but we had each other. Or we were supposed to. From the beginning, it felt like a competition I didn't know I was entered into. My sister, older, always seemed to resent my existence, my mere breath-consuming air she felt was rightfully hers. If I got a slightly larger slice of cake, she'd point it out. If I got a C and she got a B, she'd explain in excruciating detail why my C meant I was destined for failure, while her B was a minor setback on the road to inevitable greatness. It was relentless, a constant, low-grade warfare fought with veiled insults and backhanded compliments. It got worse as we got older, especially when money became a real factor. My sister thrived in the corporate world. She had a knack for climbing, for networking, for presenting an image of polished success. She drove expensive cars, lived in a fancy apartment, wore designer clothes. And she never, ever let me forget it. My own path was different. Slower. I worked just as hard, maybe harder, but my chosen field wasn't glamorous or high-paying. I was building something, yes, but it was brick by brick, slow, quiet, mostly invisible to the outside world. To her, it was just proof that I was, fundamentally, less. Every family gathering became an opportunity for her to subtly, or not so subtly, highlight the disparity between us. My modest apartment was cozy, said with a condescending tilt of her head. My sensible car was reliable, accompanied by a pitying smile. She'd talk about her latest international trip, her bonus, her stock options, while asking me, with a look of genuine concern that didn't quite reach her eyes, if I was making ends meet. It wasn't just showing off. It was a deliberate effort to make me feel small, to underline her perceived superiority. It felt like she needed my lack, my struggle, to validate her own success. There were times I wanted to scream, to tell her exactly what I thought of her and her shallow victories. But something always stopped me. Maybe it was Mom, who always hated conflict and tried to smooth things over. Maybe it was a deep-seated reluctance to give her the satisfaction of seeing how much she hurt me. Maybe it was a quiet determination to build something real, something that wasn't just about appearances, and prove her wrong in a way she couldn't dismiss. I started working 2 jobs, then 3. Late nights fueled by cheap coffee, early mornings fueled by sheer will. I saved every penny, lived on ramen and beans. I learned to tune out the noise, the subtle digs, the pitying looks. I developed a kind of tunnel vision, focused solely on my goal. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not Mom, who would worry. And especially not my sister, who would either mock my ambition or try to sabotage it. This was my fight, and I was fighting it in the shadows. Years passed like this. Years of scraping by, of watching my sister sail through life, leaving a trail of condescension in her wake. Years of enduring her questions about my financial stability, always framed as concern but laced with judgment. "Are you sure that job is sustainable, honey?" she'd ask, while discussing her own plans to buy a second property. "Maybe you should look into something more secure," she'd suggest, while showing off a new piece of jewelry. Each comment was a tiny cut, meant to bleed my confidence dry. I learned to smile and nod, to deflect, to offer vague answers. I became a master of camouflage, hiding my real efforts behind a facade of quiet, unremarkable existence. The funny thing is, while she was busy collecting designer handbags and vacation selfies, I was collecting something else entirely. I was learning, investing, building connections, taking calculated risks. I was laying foundations, brick by brick, underground where no one could see. The more she crowed about her surface-level success, the deeper I dug, the stronger I built. It became a secret project, a silent rebellion. Every patronizing comment fueled my resolve. Every time she called me little sister, I vowed to build something bigger than her wildest dreams. The invitation to Mom's 60th birthday party arrived in the mail. A formal affair at a nice restaurant, complete with a printed itinerary. My sister, naturally, was in charge of organizing everything. It was her way of demonstrating her capability, her generosity, her status. The email she sent outlining the gift expectations was typical, suggesting a group contribution for something extravagant, subtly implying individual gifts should also be of a certain caliber. I read it and smiled. This party. This was the stage I needed. For weeks leading up to the party, the calls and emails from my sister intensified. She wasn't just organizing, she was orchestrating. She dictated the dress code, the theme, even the menu. And she constantly brought up the gifts. "Have you thought about what you're getting, Mom?" she'd ask, not really asking but probing. We're all pitching in for the cruise, but I was thinking a little something extra would be nice. Something meaningful, in her world, always translated to expensive. I played along. I agreed to the group contribution, though it stretched my budget thin. I listened patiently to her monologues about the perfect gift, the right gesture, the importance of showing Mom how much we appreciated her, code for how much money we were willing to spend on her. She even sent me links to ridiculously overpriced items with notes like, "This is what I was thinking budget-wise. Just giving you ideas." It was a constant barrage, designed to make me feel inadequate before the event even began. She was setting the stage for my inevitable failure to meet her arbitrary, material standards. She didn't know I was helping her set it. The day of the party arrived. I dressed carefully, not in designer clothes, but in something simple, elegant, and comfortable. I felt a strange mix of nerves and exhilaration. Years of quiet work, years of biting my tongue, years of enduring her barbs, it all led to this. I had 2 gifts with me. The small, wrapped box, a beautiful, but not extravagant, scarf I knew Mom would love. And the other one, the real one. The restaurant was everything my sister promised, elegant, expensive, a little stuffy. She was there, of course, greeting guests, radiant and beaming, playing the perfect hostess. She hugged me, a brief, perfunctory embrace, her eyes already scanning the room for more important people. "Glad you could make it," she murmured, already turning away. "You look nice," the unspoken for you hung in the air. Dinner was a blur of forced smiles and polite conversation. My sister dominated the table talk, recounting her latest professional triumphs, her exciting future plans. She steered the conversation away from anything that might allow me to speak about my life, not that I intended to. I was content to watch, to listen, to wait. The air grew thicker with anticipation as the time for gifts approached. Mom looked genuinely happy, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension that always existed between her daughters. And then the moment came. The waiter cleared the plates, the lights dimmed slightly, and my sister announced it was time for presents. She made a little speech about how much Mom meant to us, how grateful we were, yada yada yada. Then the gift started. Group gift first, the cruise voucher, presented with fanfare and oohs and ahs. Mom cried, it was sweet. Then the individual gifts. My sister went first, of course.
A diamond pendant.
Not huge, but definitely noticeable. Just a little something, she said, handing it over. Mom was thrilled. Others followed. Thoughtful gifts, handmade gifts, store-bought gifts. Each one was a little stepping stone closer to my turn. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of the moment. Years of emotional debt were about to be repaid. My turn. I walked up to the head of the table where Mom sat, my small box in my hands. Mom's eyes lit up. She always appreciated the thought, not the price tag. I handed it to her. Before she could even unwrap it, my sister reached for it. That's when it happened. She took the box, turned it over, weighed it in her hands. The calculated look of sweet condescension. The pause. The smile. The words that sliced through the air. Cheap as always. My stomach clenched, a familiar reflex. But it wasn't the old pain. It was anticipation. Years of training, of enduring, had led to this single point. My face remained neutral, maybe a hint of a sad smile playing on my lips. I let her have her moment. Let the words hang there, solid and cruel. Let the room feel the awkwardness, the public nature of her jab. Let Mom's smile falter slightly, her eyes darting between us. She thought she had won. She thought this was just another instance of her putting me in my place, in front of everyone, cementing her narrative of my perpetual inadequacy. She saw the small box, felt its light weight, and confirmed her own bias. It was automatic for her, a deeply ingrained behavior. She didn't even consider there might be anything more. This was the trap. She was so confident in her judgment, so blind to anything outside her own material world, that she completely missed the cliff edge she was walking towards. The awkward silence following her comment stretched. It felt like an eternity. My sister preened slightly, a small, smug smirk playing on her lips. Mom looked genuinely distressed. A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The air in the room felt thin, charged. For a second, just 1 second, the old feeling of humiliation tried to creep back in, whispering that she was right, that I was cheap, that I was less. But that feeling died the instant I reached inside my jacket. My hand, steady despite the tremor running through me, found the inside pocket. My fingers closed around the heavy envelope nestled there. It wasn't wrapped. It didn't need wrapping. Its contents spoke for themselves. My eyes met my sister's across the table. Her smug look hadn't faded. She was basking in her perceived victory, oblivious. I pulled the envelope out, slowly. It was thick, official-looking. A faint rustle of paper echoed in the sudden quiet. Every eye in the room was on me now. They saw the small box she still held, and they saw the large, serious envelope in my hand. Confusion flickered across Mom's face. My sister's smugness wavered, replaced by a flicker of curiosity, then suspicion. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. My focus was entirely on my sister. This wasn't about Mom's birthday anymore. It was about 20 years of quiet abuse, of condescension, of being told I wasn't enough. This was the reckoning. I walked back towards Mom, not looking at anyone else. I reached past the small box my sister still held and presented the envelope to Mom. "Mom," I said, my voice low, steady, carrying through the hushed room. "That," I gestured to the small box, "is just a little something I know you'll enjoy. It's the scarf you liked." I paused, my eyes still locked on my sister. Her face was a mask of bewilderment now. "This," I said, holding up the envelope, "is the real gift. Mom took the envelope, looking completely lost. "What is this, dear?" she asked, her voice small. My sister's hand, the one still holding the small box, trembled slightly. Her eyes darted from the envelope to me, searching for an explanation. The color was draining from her face. The smugness was completely gone, replaced by a dawning dread. She knew, on some primal level, that something momentous was happening, something she didn't control. I looked at her, really looked at her, after years of trying to make myself invisible to her cruelty. I saw the fear replacing the arrogance. I saw the sudden, desperate need to understand. And I felt a cold, hard satisfaction spread through me, unfamiliar but potent. "Open it, Mom," I said softly. "Go ahead." Mom fumbled with the envelope, her hands shaking slightly. She pulled out the stack of papers within. The room was so silent you could hear the rustle of the paper. My sister leaned forward, her eyes wide, fixed on the documents. Mom pulled the first page free. Her eyes scanned it. Then her hand flew to her mouth. A soft gasp escaped her lips. She looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes, not tears of sadness, but of shock, of overwhelming emotion. I don't understand," she whispered. "What is this?" My sister snatched the papers from Mom's trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the document, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The color drained from her face entirely, leaving it a pasty white. Her meticulously applied makeup stood out starkly against her pallor. Her eyes darted across the legal jargon, the addresses, the names. Her name. She looked up, her eyes finding mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw true, unfiltered shock and disbelief on her face. Not feigned surprise, not calculated reaction, but genuine, gut-punch astonishment. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like a fish out of water, flopping silently. "It's a deed," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "A deed transfer." Her eyes were still fixed on the paper, but I could see her brain struggling to process the words, the meaning. "It's for the house," I said, clarifying the legalese. "The little one. On Elm Street. The house." The house she had always mocked. The small, unassuming house I had quietly bought years ago. The one I had painstakingly renovated and rented out. The foundation of the quiet fortune I had built while she was busy buying shoes. She thought it was just a modest investment, maybe even a foolish one. She had no idea of its true value, or the portfolio of properties and investments I had built around it, starting with that single, cheap house. Her gaze snapped back to mine, disbelief warring with something akin to terror. She searched my face for a punchline, a trick, anything to make sense of it. But there was only calm resolve. "You," she stammered, the papers shaking violently in her hands. "The deed. To me?" "To you," I confirmed, my voice devoid of emotion. "Signed, sealed, and delivered. As of today." The room erupted, not in applause, but in a wave of confused murmurs, whispers, gasps. People craned their necks, trying to see the papers, trying to understand the exchange. Mom was openly weeping now, a hand over her mouth. My sister stood there, rooted to the spot, clutching the deed like it was a hot coal. Her carefully constructed facade of effortless superiority had just been shattered. The woman who had built her identity on being richer, more successful, more generous because she could afford to be, had just been publicly gifted a significant asset by the sister she constantly belittled for being cheap. The silence fell again, heavier this time. All eyes were on her, waiting for her reaction. She stood there, frozen, the papers trembling, her face a mask of utter humiliation and shock. This wasn't just a gift. This was a declaration. This was me saying, "You thought I was small? You thought I was struggling? You thought you were better? While you were talking, I was building. And now, I can afford to give away more than you'll ever publicly admit to being worth." The plot twist wasn't just the gift itself. It was the years of hidden struggle, the quiet building, the calculated patience, all culminating in this single, devastating moment of reversal. She wasn't just surprised by the gift. She was blindsided by the entire reality of my life, a reality she had actively ignored and diminished for decades. She had painted me as the perpetually struggling, cheap sister for so long that the possibility of me having achieved significant success, let alone being capable of such a grand gesture, was simply outside the realm of her comprehension. Her own narrative was her undoing. She never saw me as a threat, only as a validation of her own status. And I used that blind spot as my greatest weapon. The aftermath was a chaotic blur. My sister, speechless for perhaps the first time in her life, finally sputtered something unintelligible and stumbled away from the table, clutching the deed. Mom was crying, oscillating between being overwhelmed by the gift and distressed by the obvious rift it had created. The other guests were buzzing, unsure what to say or do. Some looked impressed, others horrified by the public spectacle. I stayed calm, watching my sister retreat. There was no triumph on my face, no gloating. Just a quiet stillness. The years of pain didn't magically disappear, but their power over me had vanished in that moment. I had broken the cycle. I had shown her and everyone else that her narrative wasn't the truth. My truth was built on something far more solid than appearances. Mom reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. "Why?" she whispered, tears still streaming down her face. "Why the house?" To her. I looked at Mom, at her kind, confused eyes. "Because she needs it, Mom," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "She needs to understand. She needs to know that cheap isn't about how much you spend. It's about how much you value things. And people, and maybe, I thought, somewhere deep inside, buried beneath all that armor, she actually did need the house. Maybe it would force her to confront something real, something tangible, that didn't come with a price tag she could flaunt. Though, honestly, I doubted it. The main reason was the checkmate. The undeniable, public refutation of her lifelong claim. The rest of the party limped along awkwardly. My sister didn't return to the table. She stayed in a corner, talking intensely on her phone, occasionally shooting venomous glances my way. People came up to me, offering hesitant congratulations, asking hushed questions. I answered vaguely, not wanting to explain the complex history of emotional abuse that had led to this moment. It wasn't about explaining, it was about doing. Leaving the restaurant felt surreal. The air outside was cool and crisp, a stark contrast to the stifling tension inside. I drove home slowly, replaying the moment in my mind. Her face, the gasp, the silence. It was exactly what I had envisioned, maybe even better. It wasn't about revenge in a cruel sense. It was about setting the record straight. It was about reclaiming my own narrative. The relationship with my sister, predictably, changed forever. We didn't speak for months. When we finally did, it was strained, tentative. She never thanked me for the house directly, not in a sincere way. She tried to act like it was some kind of strange obligation I had fulfilled, or maybe even an insult disguised as a gift. But the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. She couldn't call me cheap anymore, not without the words catching in her throat. She couldn't condescend about my financial status, not when I had given her a valuable piece of property. The power she held over me for so long, the power derived from her perceived material superiority, had evaporated. I continued on my path, quietly building, quietly growing. I didn't need her validation, and I certainly didn't need her approval. The weight I had carried for so long, the burden of her judgment and disdain, was gone. It wasn't replaced by emptiness, but by a quiet strength, a deep-seated confidence that came from within, not from external validation. The house itself became a strange symbol. She kept it. She didn't sell it, didn't give it back. It just existed between us, a tangible representation of the moment everything changed. I never asked her what she did with it, or how she felt about it. It didn't matter. Its purpose had been served the moment she saw her name on the deed, the moment her smugness shattered, the moment she understood that I was not who she thought I was. I was not the little sister she could always put down. I was something else entirely, something she never bothered to see. And that, I suppose, was the most expensive lesson of all. If this story hit close to home, I'd love to hear your version. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Thanks for being here. Subscribing helps bring more of these to life.